In a warm restaurant, far from Michelin stars but elegant with its navy blue tablecloths and flickering candles, Haley entered, her heart racing. The chime of the bell above the door seemed too loud, as if everyone was watching her. Her vintage pearl-white dress, slightly worn at the hems, once belonged to her mother and gave her an air of both fragility and determination. She had worn it for her graduation, and tonight, it represented her armor. Her blonde hair, carefully curled in her small apartment, framed a lightly made-up face, her lips a subtle pink betraying her limited budget. At 6:45, she sat at a small table by the window, 15 minutes early, her bag tightly on her knees, her nerves on edge. She scanned the room, feigning nonchalance, but her eyes kept returning to the entrance. Aaron, whom she met on a dating app, seemed kind, his messages brief yet thoughtful. Accepting this date in such a chic place had been a gamble after months of hesitation. At a nearby table, Ethan Blake, a CEO in a charcoal gray suit, sipped a scotch, his gaze drawn to this young woman full of hope and nervousness. Divorced and a single father, he had just left an endless meeting, but the tension of his day faded in the presence of Haley. Something about her mix of courage and vulnerability, reminded him of a time when he still believed in new beginnings. At 7:15, Haley checked her phone, no messages. She reread Aaron's last text, "Can't wait to see you tonight." At 7:30, she called, reaching voicemail after one ring. A server approached gently. "Would you like to order, miss?" Haley, hesitant, murmured that she was still waiting for someone. In her bag, a $5 bill, her emergency fund. She had only planned for tea, hoping Aaron would share the meal. Haley remained still, her fingers clenched around the napkin, her pale face, her dry but shining eyes. She wanted to disappear, to blend into the cracks of the tile floor. Ethan, at the next table, hadn't planned to linger after his dinner, but he couldn't look away. He saw in her a mix of bravery and fear, and now, a silent pain marked her face like a bruise. He noticed she hadn't ordered anything, just water, and that her gaze darted toward the server station, calculating how long she could stay before being asked to leave. When she grabbed her coat, rising with heavy movements, a server suddenly appeared with a steaming plate of pasta and a glass of sparkling lemonade. "Your order, miss," he said with a smile. Haley, confused, stammered, "I didn't order anything." The server replied, "It's taken care of. Someone ordered it for you, and your bill is paid." Haley froze, torn between suspicion and disbelief. Was this another cruel joke? Then a calm voice rose behind her. "It's not charity. It's a reminder. You deserve to eat, even if the world tries to tell you otherwise." She turned around, surprised, and saw Ethan standing there, a hand on the back of his chair. His gaze was honest, devoid of pity or condescension, just sincere recognition. Without waiting for an invitation, he pulled the chair across from her and sat down. A silence settled, neither awkward nor forced. Then, gently, he said, "Take care of your stomach before wanting to heal someone else's heart." Haley, eyes wide, slowly sat back down. It wasn't an advance, not an insult, but a raw truth, spoken with a softness she had never known. She lowered her eyes to the plate, her hands still on her knees. "You didn't have to do this," she murmured. "I know," he replied simply. The silence that followed was comfortable, honest. Ethan, in a tailored suit and discreet but expensive watch, seemed to belong to another world. Yet his gaze was calm, curious, kind. "You don't know me," she said. "That's true, but I've seen enough." Hesitant, she asked, "And what have you seen?" He leaned slightly forward, his voice low. Someone who came, who hoped, who waited longer than she should have, not out of despair, but out of faith. Haley sat for a long time after dinner, the empty plate in front of her, but a persistent weight in her chest. Ethan, before leaving, slid a card onto the table casually. "I often come here for coffee, not for company." He gave her a slight nod, more a recognition than a goodbye, and left. A week passed, marked by classes, work, shifts at the library, and nights of studying. Haley tried to forget that evening, but Ethan's words echoed. Not just the spoken ones, but the unspoken ones, the way he had looked at her, responding with kindness without expecting anything in return. One Thursday morning, in a cozy cafe near the community college library, she rummaged through her worn wallet to pay for a black coffee when a familiar voice called out to her, "2 coffees, please. She seems to need an oat milk today." Haley turned around, surprised, and saw Ethan, sitting in a corner, laptop open, sleeves rolled up, a calm smile on his face. "You remember my name," she said softly as she sat down with the cup he handed her. "I remember your courage."
"The name was easy," he replied.
His words warmed something tired within her. They sat in silence, a pleasant silence, bathed in the morning sun and the scent of cinnamon and roasted beans. "Do you work around here?" she finally asked.
He nodded. "Sometimes."
"This place is near a research partner." Then, with surprising lightness, he recounted a failed advertising campaign for a toddler snack, mocked online by an influencer. Haley laughed, a genuine laugh, relaxed by his lack of arrogance. There was no pity or questions about her past, just a natural conversation. She talked about her classes, a disastrous attempt to cut her bangs with safety scissors. When she stood up to leave, she expected him to prolong the moment, but he simply smiled and nodded. No pressure, just respect. As she walked away, Haley realized she was smiling, not because she had been saved, but because she had been listened to, that someone had laughed with her. For the first time in years, she had shared a table by choice, not out of despair. This moment, simple yet real, marked the beginning of an unexpected connection. A few weeks later, Haley received a message from Ethan, an invitation to a workshop on child nutrition organized by his company, Blaine Organics. "This might align with your studies." "No pressure," he wrote, adding that the fees were covered. Intrigued, she attended, dressed in her light blue nurse's top under a cardigan, a notebook on her lap. The room was modest, with white chairs facing a screen displaying animated vegetables and smiling toddlers. Mothers, pediatricians, and nutrition students surrounded her. Haley, used to lacking time and money for such events, felt both out of her comfort zone and curious. During the presentation, she raised her hand twice, once to question the levels of preservatives in children's snacks, and another time to point out an inconsistency in allergen labeling. Each time, the presenter, surprised, praised her observations. Ethan, at the back of the room in a navy blazer, watched her silently. He had seen ambitious interns and confident experts, but Haley's voice was different. She wasn't trying to impress. She genuinely cared, asking questions that could one day save a life. After the workshop, while others lingered around fruit and smoothie samples, Haley slipped away to the nearby library, a warm refuge with a study room overlooking a small garden. To her surprise, as she pushed open the glass door, she found Ethan in the children's reading corner, holding the hand of a little girl in a yellow sweater dress. "Hi," he said softly, introducing Lily, his shy but curious 3-year-old daughter. Haley crouched down, smiling at the little one. "Hi, Lily." The girl, hesitant, touched the hem of Haley's cardigan and murmured, "It's pretty." Haley laughed. "You're very pretty too." Then Lily, sniffing the air near Haley, whispered, "She smells like Mommy." Silence fell, heavy with memories. Ethan, frozen, held his breath, his hands trembling slightly on Lily's shoulders. Haley, sensing the gravity of the moment, replied gently, "That's a big compliment. Your mommy must have smelled kindness." Ethan looked away, jaw clenched. "She left 2 years ago," he murmured. "Lily doesn't usually say that." Haley nodded, understanding without words. The bond between Haley and Ethan deepened through simple, unforced moments. Each week, Haley would stop by Ethan's office, sometimes to drop off annotated documents on infant nutrition, sometimes to linger a bit, sipping tea while he reviewed slides. Her insightful comments on food labels, posed with the curiosity of a future nurse, impressed Ethan more than the consultants he employed. But it wasn't just professional. Her presence, quiet and thoughtful, made these moments precious. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, when Ethan's nanny had unforeseen issues, he would call Haley, not out of necessity, but because Lily seemed calmed by her company. Haley would pick the little one up from daycare, braid her hair before bedtime, and always read 2 books, never 1, never 3. This routine became an implicit habit, a natural rhythm. They never spoke of their past, avoiding confessions or romantic gestures. Yet, when Haley left, Ethan lingered to watch her. And late at night, while working, he would sometimes draft a message to share a funny anecdote about Lily, only to erase it in the end. Their bond was fragile, yet real. One evening, the line between help and something deeper blurred. Lily had a slight fever, and Ethan, exhausted after a day of video conferences and caregiving, seemed overwhelmed. At 4:30 p.m., Haley gently knocked on his door, a tote bag in hand. "You didn't sound well on the phone," she said simply.
He let her in.
The house smelled of lemon and medicine. Lily, lying on the couch under a thin blanket, her cheeks flushed, reached out to Haley without a word. A few months later, a white envelope arrived for Haley, bearing the seal of a scholarship committee. She stared at it for 5 minutes before opening it, trembling. The first line announced a full scholarship for a 1-year pediatric specialization program in another state. It was the dream she had worked for, the sleepless nights studying, the financial sacrifices, the hope carried through the darkest moments. But instead of euphoria, a lump formed in her chest. Accepting meant leaving the warmth of Ethan's kitchen, the bedtime stories with Lily, this fragile rhythm that felt like a life. She waited 3 days before telling him, at the park, while Lily chased soap bubbles. "I got the scholarship," she said softly, her eyes downcast. Ethan immediately smiled. "Haley, that's amazing." She added, "It's in Oregon. It starts in August for a year." The wind rustled through the trees, dropping golden leaves. Ethan was silent for a moment, then said, "You should go." Surprised, she looked up. "You think?" He nodded. "You deserve it." She swallowed hard. "And what if you think I'm leaving just when everything is good? Like I used to find stability?" Ethan shook his head, his gaze gentle. Loving someone isn't about holding them back. It's about not clipping their wings. These words touched Haley deeply, soothing her fears of abandonment, her need to prove her worth by staying. A year later, Haley returned to the community hospital, her brand new badge reading, "Registered Nurse" beneath her name. After an intensive program, sleepless nights, and a homesickness stronger than she had anticipated, she was different, stronger, more confident. The morning passed in a whirlwind of introductions and paperwork, reconnecting with familiar faces from her intern days. At noon, a nurse handed her an elegant white envelope, an invitation to a product launch at 3 p.m. on the rooftop garden of Blaine Nutrition Company. A celebration of food, dignity, and second chances, the invitation specified. Haley instantly knew it was from Ethan. At exactly 3 p.m., she stepped out of the elevator into an airy garden adorned with flowering herbs and twinkling lights. A table displayed pastel packages labeled "Her First Spoon," dedicated to women who had gone hungry to nourish hope. Haley paused, moved, recognizing in the silhouette on the boxes a woman holding a child, a spoon in hand, a subtle evocation of their story. Ethan, near the podium, was speaking to investors and journalists, his voice steady yet warm. When he caught her gaze, a slight smile lit up his face. After his speech, he walked straight towards her. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me," she replied softly. "Impossible," he said, his eyes full of warmth. Then, Ethan pulled a small box from his pocket, revealing a simple ring with a discreet stone. She simply nodded, not out of overwhelming emotion, but because she was choosing love from a place of peace, where two beings, each broken in their own way, were whole enough to stand side by side. A few months later, Haley entered the same restaurant where it all began, hand in hand with Ethan, their fingers naturally intertwined. Lily trotted ahead of them, her pigtails dancing in her navy blue dress. The same hostess guided them to a familiar corner table, but this time, there were 3 chairs. Ethan pulled out Haley's chair, then helped Lily settle in. No more distance, no more silent observation, just a shared table. The same soft lighting, the same polished wood, the same server who once asked her if she wanted to order. Everything felt surreal. Ethan handed her the menu with a teasing smile. "Order whatever you want. Tonight, we eat for the girl who waited 45 minutes still believing someone would come." Haley chuckled softly, her eyes sparkling. "You remember everything?" she asked. "I remember you," he simply replied. Lily then pulled out a drawing from her little backpack, a house with a yellow door, a smiling sun, and 3 characters around a table, a woman with blonde hair, a tall man with glasses, and a little girl in purple shoes. "That's us," Lily said proudly. "And that's spaghetti, because Mom Haley loves spaghetti." Haley held her breath, touching the paper, moved. "Did you draw this today?" she asked. Lily nodded. "At school, the teacher said to draw what we love the most. I chose dinner with you and Dad." Ethan exchanged a glance with Haley. No words were necessary. The server brought warm bread and water without interrupting the intimacy of the moment. Haley looked at the 2 beings before her, the man who had paid for her dinner without a word, the little girl who saw her as a home. She picked up her glass of water, softly murmuring, "You were never late. I just needed to believe long enough to wait." Ethan squeezed her hand, a simple gesture, but loaded with meaning. Outside, night was falling, but inside, around this table with 3 chairs, something was being born. Their relationship evolved without grand declarations, without oppressive expectations. Haley and Ethan shared simple moments, impromptu dinners, laughter over Lily's anecdotes, comfortable silences where neither felt the need to fill the void. Haley continued her shifts at the hospital, her days filled with patients and new responsibilities, but she found comfort in the small routines with Ethan and Lily. He, CEO of Blaine Organics, managed meetings and launches but always reserved time for these moments. He admired Haley's quiet strength, her ability to ask relevant questions during product presentations, to notice details that his teams missed. She, on her part, saw in Ethan not just the businessman, but the man who laughed at his daughter's clumsy drawings, who listened without judgment. One evening, while they were putting away the dishes after dinner at Ethan's, Lily asleep upstairs, Haley asked, "Why me? You could have ignored that girl alone at the restaurant." Ethan set down a plate, thought, because I saw someone who didn't give up, even after being disappointed. It reminded me that I too had stopped believing in certain things. You made me want to try again. His words, simple, touched Haley. They weren't speaking of love in grand terms, but every gesture, a lingering glance, a brushed hand, carried a deeper truth. Their bond was not made of promises or obligations, but of repeated choices to be present. One day, during a walk, Lily asked Haley if she would stay forever. Haley, surprised, replied, "I'm not leaving, but sometimes people have to go where their heart leads them, and my heart always brings me back here." Ethan, who was listening, smiled without saying anything. That evening, he drew with Lily another house, this time with a garden where heart-shaped flowers grew. This drawing became a symbol of their budding family, a reminder that true love does not hold back, but accompanies. Their story was not one of rescue or fairy tales, but of two people learning to love each other without fear, and of a little girl who, unknowingly, guided them towards a home. Months later, Haley, Ethan, and Lily formed a whole, a family born not from a grand moment, but from thousands of little instances. They often returned to the restaurant where it all began, always at the same corner table, now reserved for 3. The candles flickered, glasses clinked, and the scent of rosemary bread filled the air. Haley, in a simple yet confident dress, was no longer the nervous young woman waiting for a stranger. Ethan, still in a suit but more relaxed, laughed more easily. Lily, with her pigtails and unfiltered questions, brought spontaneous joy. During one dinner, Lily showed a new drawing, a table, 3 chairs, and a heart in the center. "It's us forever," she said. Haley moved, touched Ethan's hand under the table. He squeezed hers in return, a gesture worth all promises. The waiter, recognizing Haley, smiled at her. "Good to see you again." She laughed. "This time, I'm not alone." Ethan added, "And she never will be again." It wasn't a dramatic declaration of love, but a truth rooted in their journey. That evening, as night enveloped the restaurant, they shared a dessert, laughing at the crumbs on Lily's chin. Haley looked at Ethan, then at Lily, and whispered, "You are my home."